Iron Man's trajectory in the Axis event was a true turning point. Imagine the Tony Stark we already know, brilliant, innovative, but now filled with extraordinary arrogance and greed. During this Marvel crossover, a spell reversed the morale of the heroes and villains, transforming Stark into something much worse. Here, the billionaire inventor was elevated to another level of arrogance, carrying with him a narcissism as thick as his armor. The change went beyond looks or abilities. It was a transformation in his very essence. And what about your attitudes? Tony, now more vain than ever, saw himself as above any morality, which was reflected in each of his decisions. If before he had a certain appreciation for humanity, this new version of Iron Man simply didn't care about the suffering of others. It was the height of his ambition. If you stop to think about it, the power he already possessed, combined with his lack of empathy, turned him into a real danger to everyone around him. It's as if someone with the power to shape the future would rather play with lives like pieces in a game. However, this transformation did not happen overnight. It was a gradual evolution of his ego, like a balloon being inflated until it almost burst. With each new decision, Tony demonstrated that his thirst for control and dominance was insatiable. He wanted to be more than a hero, more than a simple Iron Man from Marvel or the Avengers. He wanted to be a god. And so, we see the increasingly dark consequences of his choices, which culminate in attitudes that shock even his closest allies. Superior Iron Man, with all his genius and ambition, decided to use technology for something even more sinister: to create Extremis 3.0. At first, this virus seemed like a gift to humanity, offering enhanced abilities and perfect bodies. Who wouldn't want increased strength or to heal diseases with a simple app? But, like everything that comes from Tony Stark, there was a price. Literally. He charges for the continuous use of the technology, and what seemed like a solution soon revealed itself to be a form of mass control. Tony Stark, now more manipulative than ever, used Extremis 3.0 as a tool of power. Imagine being in the shoes of someone who depended on the app to stay healthy and strong, and suddenly the prices went up, leaving no choice but to pay. This control over the population made it clear that, for superior Iron Man, greed and domination were above any common good. Extremis 3.0 became a true trap, something he used to extort and keep everyone under his command. An action worthy of a villain, without a doubt. Stark reached the point of threatening the lives of those who dared to oppose him. An example of this was when he pressured a man to accept the virus by threatening his son's life. The humanity of Tony, the hero we once knew, seemed to have completely disappeared, replaced by a corrupt and cruel version. It's interesting to think about how someone who was once an Avenger and a global hero could sink so low, turning technology into an instrument of tyranny. This absolute control and his warped view of reality set the stage for the next point, where we will see just how far he is willing to go to maintain his dominance. With the new version of Iron Man, we see Tony Stark in epic battles against his former allies. He not only became more powerful, but also more ruthless. One of the most striking moments was his fight with Daredevil, where Stark did not hesitate to use all his technological superiority to crush the blind hero. Just imagine Daredevil, with all his skills and heightened senses, being completely overwhelmed by an armor that anticipated every move. Tony Stark was no longer playing to save the world, but to demonstrate his dominance over anyone who dared to oppose him. Another iconic confrontation was against Storm. Stark showed that, in addition to his physical strength, he possessed a cold and calculating intelligence, challenging even the powers of mutants. He manipulated the electromagnetic field, neutralizing much of Storm's attacks and proving that, in terms of strategy and technology, he was always one step ahead. This fight is a perfect example of how superior Iron Man had no more scruples or limits to maintain his supremacy. The question now was not just to win, but to crush anyone who threatened his status. What's most disturbing is how these battles highlight that Tony Stark no longer saw himself as just a hero, or even an Avenger. He was convinced he was a god among men, destined to rule over all with his superior technology. This change in mentality shows us that, for him, the line between hero and villain had vanished. And this leads us to an even greater question. How far would Stark be willing to go to ensure that no one could challenge him? The saga of Superior Iron Man may have ended in the comics, but speculations about his return in the future continue to heat up. After all, in a universe like Marvel's, where heroes and villains are always evolving, it's hard to imagine that Tony Stark wouldn't explore this darker version of himself again. What if this version of Iron Man appeared in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? It would be a bold move, but it would certainly make a huge impact on fans, especially if we consider the possibility of him using the Infinity Stones, further amplifying his already nearly limitless power. After all, Stark, with the mind of Superior Iron Man, wouldn't settle for less. He has already shown that he is willing to trample over anyone to achieve his goals, so it makes sense to speculate about what he would do with something as powerful as the Infinity Stones in his hands. Just imagine the chaos and control he could exert, not just over the Avengers, but over the entire universe. This is an idea that generates a certain fascination because we all know what he is capable of when he has no moral limits to restrain him. If Superior Iron Man really does make a comeback in the cinema, fans can expect something grand. The consequences of his return would bring a new level of tension, both for the heroes and for the overall narrative of the MCU. And now, with these speculations hanging in the air, the lingering question is, will we ever see this dark Tony Stark back in action? After all, in the Marvel Universe, anything is possible, and the anticipation of seeing him again only grows.